Hello and welcome to the second instalment of Joe's Drawing Club. Today we are going to look at pencil pressure and drawing straight lines with and without a ruler. Let's get started. Today you will need a ruler or a straight edge, a pencil, a rubber and of course some paper. I always put a couple of pieces of paper stacked on top of one another so we don't mark the surface. First thing we want to do is warm up our hands, because obviously when we're drawing we need our hands to do exactly what we want them to do, so we're going to do a little bit of warming up. Now I like to think of this as washing my hands, so I'll do the very similar exercises that I use to wash my hands. So I'll run my fingers through one another, I'll manipulate my thumbs, I'll apply pressure on my fingertips into the palm of my hand. When your hands get cold, the first things that go numb are the tips of your fingers, so you want to get the blood flowing into the tips of those fingers. So we're going to apply some pressure by clenching our fists and then expanding our hands, and with this we're creating that movement and warming up all of those muscles that we need to do our drawing. Wrists a little bit too. Just get as much movement in there as possible. And now I'm good to start drawing. Our first exercise is going to be a little warm-up exercise, and we're going to take the top left-hand side of our page and just draw some spirals, very similar to what we did in our last lesson. So for this one I'm going to go in a clockwise direction, same direction as the hands of a clock, getting larger as I go, trying not to overlap on those lines. When they get to a certain size I'm going to stop, and then for this one I'm going to go in an anti-clockwise direction, so in the opposite direction to the hands of a clock. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more small spirals, just to get that movement of moving your wrist and your hand, creating that movement. That's going to give you the fluidity of movement that you need when drawing. The lines are going to go in the direction that you want them to go, and you're going to gain more control through doing this exercise before jumping straight into your drawing. Our next exercise is just to draw a little square, and now we're going to draw larger squares on the outside of those. Now I'm not precious of this work, so these squares are going to overlap my spirals. We don't want to be wasting paper, so considering this corner is nothing precious, we're just going to use it to doodle and do different patterns. Now we can also just draw some circles, trying to make those circles as neat as you can, as and controlled as you can. We could also do our little exercise where we're drawing circles on the outside of circles, just keeping that movement. Now I feel like I'm warmed up to get to my next stage, and this stage is pencil pressure. Now when I apply my pencil to the paper, I can push really hard, and if I push really hard, the graphite from the tip of this pencil is going to be embedded within the fibres of the paper. So if you think about the fibres of the paper and the graphite, when you push really hard, that graphite pushes into those fibres and it locks in. That makes it really difficult for it to come out. Now, if I was to apply very little pressure, the fibres of that paper and the graphite is just going to sit on top. And I can prove this through rubbing it out. So where I've applied no pressure, or very little pressure, when I rub that out, I can actually make that line fully disappear, because the graphite was almost just sat on top of the surface and I've brushed it away using the rubber. Now where I've used more pressure, the graphite has locked itself into the paper. Now I've managed to get rid of some of it, but there is always going to be some that remains within that paper. So when it comes to drawing, we want to apply as little pressure as possible, especially whilst we're drawing working lines. Now working lines are lines that we draw to guide us for our final piece, but don't actually play a part and don't need to be there at the end. So if I was to draw a cube, I'm going to draw some lines very faintly, and these are working lines, and my most comfortable movement is from left to right because I'm right-handed and it's away from my body. So I'm going to turn my workpiece, I'm going to turn the paper rather than try to create the lines in a strange direction. I'm going to turn the paper and create those lines where I need them to be. So now I've drawn a cube. Now I've got a lot of crossover lines here. So I'm going to go over the lines that I want to keep with a little bit more pressure. So I've got a line here. So I'm taking the lines that I've drawn, the ones that I want to keep, and I'm applying a little bit more pressure on those. And I can also say, oh, that one didn't really look right, so I can change it a little bit and it won't matter. Now I've got a cube. Now my working lines, because I've applied very little pressure to those, I can remove them using the rubber. And they'll simply disappear. And it will look as if I've drawn that cube straight off without even thinking about kind of the working lines. You can no longer see those working lines. I've now got a cube, and it's a lot easier to do that than it is to try to make sure that you get the cube. If I was to draw a cube or with the paper staying static and with no crossover lines, it's really difficult. And that, to me, doesn't look as good as that. Because this, I didn't move my paper, I didn't do any working lines, and actually, where I made a mistake, I wasn't able to change it because I'd already pushed quite hardly with my pencil. So with this one, I've pushed lightly, creating my working lines, and then I've drawn over that to get my final piece. If I want to draw a straight line, the most comfortable way, as I was saying, is from my body away. So if I draw a line, I can actually draw a very straight line. And the faster and the lighter you go, the smoother that line will look. So if I'm to draw a line from here to here and go slowly and try to keep it as straight as I can, notice how my hand judders, and then I start applying almost too much concentration and the line gets wobbles in it. But if I want to draw a straight line, I can just draw a straight line. And if it's not too straight, it doesn't matter, because actually I've drawn it light enough to be rubbed out. And it doesn't really worry me if I've got a line there that isn't correct, because I can get rid of it. And now, that's taken me years of practice to get straight lines like that, and it is very difficult to draw straight lines. So that's why we have these fantastic tools of rulers, and rulers do help tremendously. But with a ruler, mistakes can be made too. All too often, I see this, or I see this, or I see this, where half of the ruler is being used, and at some points it's not. And the reason for that is because a ruler needs to be used correctly in order to get a nice straight line. And I find that the best way to do that is to apply pressure downward on the ruler when it's in the position where you want it to be, with 2 or 3 fingers, okay? Applying pressure downwards. And then with your pencil, rather than holding too closely to the pencil and drawing really close and not being able to see where you're going, hold the pencil further back. And when you hold the pencil further back, you can almost sit the tip of that pencil into the groove between the paper and the ruler, and then you can just drag it. And you can drag that really gently, or if it's a line that you definitely know you want to keep, you can put a bit more pressure on there and make a harsher line. And notice that that was a very comfortable way for me to do that. And if I want to draw a line straight across here, rather than having my ruler like this and drawing a line and then drawing it and risk it pushing the ruler because I'm applying too much pressure and my hands are in the wrong position, I'm simply going to turn my work, hold the ruler where I want it to be, and draw that line. And you can use this when drawing anything. Applying that pressure, drawing those lines, turning. So now I've neatened up that cube. So we've used a ruler and we've looked at pencil pressure. Now with this cube, this top, I want this to be nice and light, so I'm going to apply very little pressure to that one. But for me to apply very little pressure, first I need to apply a lot of pressure. So on this side, I'm going to colour this side in with my pencil, applying quite a bit of pressure. Now notice that when I'm colouring here, I'm going with that edge, and I've got parts here that aren't covered. So I'm going to turn my work and again colour with that line, and I'm cross-hatching here, so I'm drawing the pencil in 2 different directions. But notice how I haven't gone out of the lines too much, because actually I've coloured within those 2 lines, and then I've turned and coloured within the other 2 lines. So I've got a dark side, this side's going to be a medium side, so I'm going to apply a little bit less pressure, and I'm going to go across, I'm going to turn, and I'm going to go across. And then this top one is going to have very little pressure at all, so I'm going to go as lightly as I possibly can. Across that direction, turn it. There we go. And then we have a shaded cube. So for this exercise, I want you to just practice on a piece of paper, do some warming up, use your ruler, have a little play, draw some lines, move that paper around, create different patterns. We don't have to be precious of this. Just creating some wonderful things, creating straight lines and trying to gain control over your pencil and your ruler. That's this lesson finished. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.